Welcome to In Touch Crime Beat. I'm Officer Don with Fayette Commonwealth's Attorney Ray Larson.
Out of jail, okay? Don't mess up.
And those are the people, those repeat offenders, the ones that go to prison. And
I say we're the #1 rated radio show in the whole country. Do this show thing here, and she says, "Well, I got a question for the prosecutor."
Yeah.
She says, "Why did they prosecute that guy in Texas where the DUI guy killed his 2 kids, and then he shot him?" I guess she thought maybe that they were even. Why would a prosecutor prosecute?
the jury thought they were even too. You got to understand that. Well, if the same kind of case, let me give you an example.
Okay. Let's tell about that case first.
Okay.
Texas.
Well, the guy, some drunk driver, ultimately, because of his drunk driving, ended up killing 2 children of a man and a wife.
Okay.
And the man killed the guy, the drunk driver.
Okay.
Because he shot him.
Now, do you know he shot him almost immediately? He didn't go to his house later and shoot him. My understanding was that he went to his house, retrieved a gun, and then shot and killed him on the scene. That was my understanding of it. Just for clarification.
Okay. So, legally, you gotta look at that legally. And the question is, was he he shot and killed somebody. Now, was that justified? Now, under the law, justification comes up as self-defense. Now, the question is, was the man who shot and killed the drunk driver in fear of his own serious physical injury or death, or the serious physical injury or death at the time of his kids? Answer that question for me. No.
Doesn't appear to be.
No. And so he wasn't entitled to use self-defense, right? Mm-hmm. So that case then has to be presented to the grand jury. And the grand jury probably indicted him because those are the facts. Then you go to trial with a jury. And a jury is made up of 12 citizens who bring the feelings of the community and that sort of thing to the case, to the trial, and they listen to all of the facts. And in this case, the jury said not guilty. Now, that wasn't the legal answer, but that was in their minds, the common sense answer.
Which is probably a case of jury nullification.
Yes.
I've heard that term before.
Right.
Let's go back to the grand jury for a second. For those who have not served on a grand jury, that's the first. In a case like this, that's the first stage. It goes to the grand jury.
Not necessarily, but it goes to the grand jury, and the grand jury is made up of in Lexington is made up of 12 citizens who are randomly drawn. And I'm telling you, the grand jurors come in every size, shape, color, all of that. They have to be able to speak and understand the English language. They have to be a resident of the United States and Fayette County, or a citizen and a resident of Fayette County. And then the police officers typically are the witnesses, and we have a prosecutor. And they come in and present evidence about a specific case or situation. And if the grand jury believes that there's sufficient evidence to believe, first of all, that the crime occurred and this person probably committed it, which is probable cause, then they can vote to return an indictment. And it doesn't have to be unanimous. 9 of the 12 have to vote to return an indictment. If an indictment is returned, then it goes to Fayette Circuit Court and it's set for trial. Now, a person can either plead guilty or a person can go to trial. And that's what happened in Texas with the father who killed the guy the drunk driver who was responsible for the death of his 2 children.
So you mentioned that not every case will go to the grand jury. Why would a homicide case not go to the grand jury?
Well,
Under what circumstances would
well,
that go?
there are a couple of circumstances. First of all, there's not sufficient evidence for the police to make an arrest.
Okay.
They don't have enough evidence to arrest somebody, and that
And
happens.
so it wouldn't go to the grand jury? It would not?
No.
Okay.
First of all, you got to have a charge.
So you have to feel there's probable cause.
The
before
police
you-
officer has to.
Okay.
And if they make an arrest, then it goes through a preliminary hearing in district court. If the judge thinks there's enough evidence to send it to the grand jury, then that's when we get it.
But there's some cases like the one in Ferguson where the police haven't said that they think that the officer should be charged with anything, but that case is going to the grand jury.
All
Why
right,
does- why would
that's called a direct submission.
that- Okay. Why would that happen?
And a case can be. We will take cases directly to the grand jury without the police officer necessarily making an arrest. And in those kind of cases, for example, child sexual abuse cases or a lot of rape cases, where a lot of times defense attorneys will subpoena a child to come to a preliminary hearing. Well, a kid that's been allegedly sexually abused doesn't need to be beat up in a preliminary hearing by cross-examination and that sort of stuff. So we just take it directly to the grand jury, and we provide the defense attorney if an indictment's returned with all the information about the investigation that we have, and we just avoid beating up on a child victim or a rape victim.
So it is the prosecutor's discretion to take a case directly to the grand jury, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Now,
In the community, if he takes it to the grand jury and lets them decide. I
well,
mean, that's-
I'll tell you
that's a
something.
Political reason to do it.
Well, I'll tell you something else. Kentucky's a little different than Missouri, because in Missouri, typically, the prosecutor files charges. You see, in Kentucky, the police file charges.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so it's not the usual thing to present a case in Missouri directly to the grand jury, or even use the grand jury.
Normally, the police go to the prosecutor, they explain the probable cause,
Mhm.
and then the prosecutor decides whether or not to submit for a warrant for the judge.
That's right.
And here, the officers go, they submit the probable cause often directly to pretrial to the judge, and the judge decides whether or not to sign off on it, or they just make an arrest. They can make an arrest for felonies without having to submit that process. Okay,
Right.
so it's a little different process.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's it'll be interesting. You know, the guy that's the prosecutor in St. Louis County is a friend of mine,
Mhm.
Bob McCullough, and I think I told you that. He's a smart guy. He's a tough guy, and when he told the governor, look, you keep mouthing about not wanting me on this case, you have the authority to remove me. Why don't you man up and either do it or don't do it,
Mhm.
but man up, make a decision, because the decision has to be made now, not 2/3 of the way through an investigation.
Well, the governor also hinted at what kind of decision he wanted too, in his tone. You know, it should be
Mhm.
vehemently prosecuted, he said. And it's like, wait a second, it should be investigated and then determine if it needs to be prosecuted.
That's right. Well,
So it's
the
a-
governor kind
it's a
of
big old
poo-pooed in his shoe.
mess there, and you know, it will probably turn out to be that officer, and this is acting in self-defense. I mean, that's just
I don't know.
it's going to wind up happening. But let's just hope
I'll
that
tell-
if that's the case, they have the political fortitude to leave politics out of it.
Well,
Please do right.
I don't think the feds are involved too, you know, and they're doing this civil rights thing, and I got absolutely zero faith in Eric Holder to do just exactly what you
Well,
said.
it's
I
a-
think he's a political.
It's the same deal. When's the last time that the White House sent representatives to a police officer's funeral? But they send representatives to a funeral of a person that allegedly tried to kill a police officer. I mean, that's
what that has done to the morale of police across the country, I don't think that they have any impact on it. I mean, that you think about that for a second. This guy allegedly attempted to kill a police officer, and they sent ambassadors to his funeral, but the last police funeral they didn't send any ambassadors. It's crazy.
Or even to the general that was killed in Iraq.
It's just
It's a hoot.
politics. Just they don't belong in a situation like that.
No, they don't. Well, a lot of things going on that bear talking about. Juveniles, we're starting to see. Even my wife said, "Hey, there seems to be an adult and then juveniles committing the crime, and the adult kind of standing by." And she says, "That's a new phenomenon." I said, "No, that's an old phenomenon, because juveniles almost never get in trouble."
Especially with gang-related violence, right?
That's right.
They organize that stuff.
And drug dealing.
Right.
You know, let the 16-year-olds, excuse me, deal the dope, while the 18 or 20-year-old or 30-year-old gives them the dope to sell.
What a lot of people don't get is you actually earn your street credit, your merit badge on the street, if the more times that you get busted as a juvenile and you don't rat and you don't roll, and the worst crime that you do as a juvenile and get by with, that really takes you up in the rank of these gangs. Is that
Well, the
not true?
thing that offends me the most is that juvenile court these days continues to be confidential. We're not, the public is entitled to know who the bad guys are, whether they're juveniles or not. If the people that are breaking into homes, people that are selling dope, people that are hurting people that are juveniles, juvenile court protects them.
Well, don't you think they should be protected as long as it's not a violent crime?
No.
Okay. So you
Yeah,
think
no.
a 13-year-old that steals something out of a garage? is
No,
charged?
the 13-year-old that commits a burglary, we need to know.
Who's we? The public?
The public. Why? You know, that right now, there's almost no pressure on the parents to do anything because nobody knows about it, right? Yeah. The 13-year-old sitting next to your daughter in school that was convicted of a sex crime, and you don't know about it.
But if you
She doesn't know
if
about
you make a now the sex crimes aside, because I agree with sex and crimes of violence, but with all that aside, how does a person ever get a clean slate if they do something stupid when they're a kid, like vandalize something?
They outlive
steal something out of a
it.
garage?
They outlive it. They follow the do-right doctrine. That's what they do. I mean, come on. What are you going to do? Give everybody all these crimes up to the point that they're 18 years old, and then all of a sudden you're going to expect them to be fine, dandy people? They're not. I mean, we're seeing young people commit very serious crimes. Burglary. That's not a violent crime in Kentucky. Come on. Our legislature's decided that. So at any rate, I think we ought to open juvenile court. You and I disagree on that. You seem to be relatively liberal on that. Hey, your buddy Shane Ragland's in the news again.
We got about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. But I understand that he's when he beat up his girlfriend and her
Now
kids or
he clobbered one of her kids.
something. The allegation is that there's an EPO.
Yeah. Allegation, they did it in Spencer County. What do you mean allegation? You're a weenie.
See, just because I think if you steal a pack of gum, that shouldn't be on your criminal record the rest of your life. Now I'm a weenie. See?
Yeah,
And he's
that's a confession. We just heard it.
We'll see you next week on In Touch.